So the real question is, how did we get to this place? How does a Jewish policeman from the United States of America wind up working in France, Ukraine, Kosovo, and many other countries around the globe? Here's what I will tell you. My work abroad really first started out in 1999, but I found myself in Paris at the request of the French Jewish community in 2006. There was a murder of a young Jewish boy at the hands of a gang, a young man named Ilan Halimi. I don't know how many of you remember him. He was tortured for 3 weeks, brutally murdered, and the French Jewish community could not quite understand how this happened, and more so, unfortunately, why was there such a lack of response from the policing community? This is in a democratic society. Where were the police? Where were the prosecutors? Where were the authorities? Where were the elected officials? Some unfortunately saw this as just another murder in a suburb by a gang. And quite honestly, quite frankly, that was not the case. Back in those days, things were different, but back in those days was only just a little over a decade ago. How many of you in this room know who Marielle Knoll is? So for the rest of you, let me tell you who Marielle is. She is a success story. As a child, she barely escaped the July 16th, 17th, 1942 Valdiv roundup, when the French police aggressively and actively handed over 13,152 Jews to the Nazi occupiers. Marielle survived. She thrived. She lived her life in Paris. Marielle was tortured, stabbed 11 times, and left in a burning apartment just 10 days ago. Just 10 days ago, because she was a Jew. She was the second Holocaust survivor to be butchered in Paris. The second Holocaust survivor. For the first time in modern history, and the first time since the Holocaust, we are starting to see Jewish communities in democratic societies, in places of culture, not only begin to rethink what they do and where they go based on security, but now when Jewish children in 2018 enter synagogues, schools, they have to pass special operations militia troops. And this is not just in Paris, France. Who would think in 2018 we need crack troops once again circling our religious institutions because of where bigotry and hatred have come? We are in a perfect storm, and unfortunately, too many, they're either looking the other way or they're not looking closely enough. The perfect storm are the jihadists who want to kill in the name of Allah, and unfortunately they're focused on the Jewish community. And we now see ultranationalists rising their ugly heads once again, only more so. Just 2-3 years ago they were marginalized. And now these groups are becoming mainstream and empowered. And we have this other wonderful, wonderful tool. I use it every day. I wish I invested in it. Google, the internet. They're talking to each other. They're communicating with each other. We have come to a very, very difficult place. And we all know what happened 70 years ago. We stood in a place yesterday. We stood in the crematoria. No one says, and I'm not saying, that that's where we're going or we want to go. But unfortunately, there's a number of people from both sides of the extreme that want to see us get there. So silence is not going to be a good thing. And I'll tell you, I sat in the back of the room today hearing some extraordinary presentations about the significance and the importance of the legal system, and how that legal system, if made to work, particularly in democratic societies, can be a very, very strong voice and can question those publicly, legally. We have different laws in the United States. So what John very eloquently described are some of the activities that we're doing, or wanted me to describe some of the activities that we're involved in the United States. We haven't succeeded in stamping out hate or prosecuting hate or arresting haters, but what we have done is we brought this to the light. People are thinking about it. People are questioning it. People understand if they're Muslim, if they're Christian, if they're Hindi, if they're Jewish. What we have very effectively done, and in particular, I'm very proud to say we pioneered this in the state of New Jersey. What we have very, very effectively done is we have built bridges. We refer to it as BCOT, building communities of trust between the law enforcement, the police, and the communities that they're sworn to protect. Because that's what we've overseen. When we think in terms of anti-Semitism and how we got here, many parts of anti-Semitism are institutional, thousands of years old. There are other aspects of anti-Semitism that we have to deal with legally. People do need to be prosecuted if they attack or kill or maim or cross that threshold in the name of Allah, or in the name of Rahowa, which means racial holy war for the white supremacists, whose numbers unfortunately are growing right now in extraordinary numbers. So what we have focused on, and our focus, was canary in a mine. And people sometimes don't like being the canary in the mine. The canaries in the mine die first, and that's a warning. And the Jewish community very much, unfortunately, whether they want to or not, has become that canary in the mine. But what we're doing is we're looking at the police authorities, and we're asking them, have you not been attacked in your streets in Denmark? Did you have someone looking to get into a synagogue to kill the congregation members of that synagogue and kill your police officers to get in there? Don't you understand that the threat against us is a threat against the greater democracy? And don't you understand that if we die, potentially, may we all? The Muslim communities of the United States, they have been working very closely with many of the Jewish communities. We don't get involved in whether we should discuss Israel or politics. Where we focus is on the fact that an imam in a mosque can pray in that mosque without having to worry that someone's going to come through that door and kill everyone, just like what occurred in Quebec just a year ago. 6 worshipers executed by a white supremacist. So politics aside, if we can't pray, if we can't be, if we can't study in our houses of worship, then we're all canaries in the mine. So we focus on building communities of trust. Our programs have been really based, predicated, focused on training, working with the police to understand this is your community. That synagogue is not some foreign territory. That synagogue is yours. This is your synagogue, as much as it's anyone's synagogue. That church is yours. The police need to understand, and they have, and we've worked very diligently in the United States on these trainings, and we've seen success. We really have. I'll give you an example. The state of New Jersey, 16, 18 years ago, by the way, for those of you that don't know, New Jersey probably has more Polish people than Poland. New Jersey has more Irish than Ireland. I say that almost half kidding, but I'm not. We're the most diverse place in the United States, if not one of the most remarkable diverse places in the world. We build bridges and we close a few. A few of you will understand that. Let's mark that from the, yeah. So just in closing, the reason I mentioned New Jersey is in New Jersey 20 some odd years ago when we first started down this path, and we brought together the law enforcement community with communities that we considered vulnerable, there were no reports of hate crimes. None. There are no hate crimes in the state of New Jersey. But I knew better. There were swastikas on synagogues. Asian people that were moving into our cities outside of New York were being beaten up. There was a change going on, and unfortunately some were not happy with that change. We trained our police. We trained our communities to understand, do not fear to report a hate crime. What is a hate crime? How does it impact your society? We focused on the prosecutors. We focused on the judges. We didn't necessarily work to change their minds whether they were prejudiced or prejudge other human beings, but what we did do is we focused on having them understand that if we don't collaborate, if we don't work together, we're all going to be impacted by these negative things that were going on out there. So our work, really, what makes us kind of extraordinary, and I'll close on this, is we are not necessarily a very big group of people from the human rights sections or coming in from social services. We really do represent the police, the prosecutors, others that work in this world and have firsthand had the opportunity to see the impact of hate on communities and society. And as we all stood there yesterday, I think every one of us in this room, otherwise you wouldn't want to be here, understand that if we keep silent, if we don't try to work towards building communities of trust, we could be in potentially a very, very sad place in the days or months to come. By the way, there are some very extraordinary things going on in the United States as well, and we're working very, very hard. We're not looking to silence. We have this little thing called First Amendment. We're not looking to silence folks, but if people want to kill, hurt, or shut us down in the name of hate, or because of who we are, they're going to jail. I'm talking if they cross a threshold. Thank you very much.